So much uncertainty surrounding you. There is one auto dealership that you can be certain about, and that's Doan Ford. You can be certain that you always get a great deal and the best service afterwards. Being in business for over 50 years has given Doan Ford the reputation of being a strong, reliable dealership. Be certain. Choose Doan Ford. Online at doanford.com.
I'm not buying till I check Doan Ford.
Calls and conversations continue in less than 3 minutes as the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues after this.
Are you or your loved ones facing a serious legal battle? The law office of Paul Harris wants you to know you aren't alone. Do you need someone that's not afraid to go to trial and fight for your rights? Attorney Paul Harris and his team are willing to go where most firms are not. The courtroom. With a successful track record in civil litigation, criminal defense, including tax issues and healthcare fraud, Harris Law Office will fight for their clients by offering the most aggressive representation in and out of court. Call Paul Harris at Harris Law Office for a free consultation. 304-232-5300.
New Belgium Fat Tire Amber Ale is now available in West Virginia and distributed locally by wine and beverage merchants. With its toasty and biscuit-like malt flavors blended perfectly with hoppy freshness, it's bound to become one of your new favorite craft beers. Fat Tire Amber Ale is now available at local retailers. Please don't drink and drive, and drink responsibly. From your friends at Wine and Beverage Merchants.
I'm Josh from Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. I hope you are staying healthy. We continue to respond to structural, fire, and water emergencies. We are combating COVID-19 with our highly trained staff and latest disinfection systems, providing preventative and reactive disinfection to facilities around the region, while working with area hospitals on isolation areas and air filtering. At Panhandle, we continue to follow social distancing and hygiene protocols. We are dedicated to our community, and together we will get through this.
More live and local programming than anyone else in the Ohio Valley. The Watchdog returns in moments.
Hello, everyone, from the Watchdog. I'm the Storm Tracker, Darnell Foster, with a look at your local weather forecast for your Tuesday. Look for partly to mostly sunny skies, a daytime high of 44, the overnight low of 31 under partly cloudy skies. Clouds limited sunshine around for your Wednesday, with highs in the low to mid-40s. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
Conversations you care about with people you know. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe on WKKX and WVLY.
It is a cold morning this morning. It's 20 degrees at the Wheeling, 21 degrees actually, at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. 19 degrees here at my home studios in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling, and 20 degrees at the Robinson Auto Group Studios downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. All of those are actual temperatures, your feels-like temperature, roaming around 20. It is a cold morning. Be bundled up when you go outside. That reminds you might have to scrape your windows this morning. It's that kind of a morning. I just keep saying it's January, so don't be totally surprised. 41 for the high today, 46 tomorrow. A little bit of showers possible tomorrow. Colder again on Thursday, and we might see the S word. Maybe. Snow flurries, snowflakes, or even if things take a wrong turn, some accumulative snow. Again, that's by no means a definite. It's just a possibility. Coming up today on the Watchdog Morning Show, we'll in a moment or two talk with our national correspondent, Tom Squidieri, about the Cold War. It's not really the Cold War, but concerns over nuclear proliferation and nuclear destruction and so on. It is the anniversary of the insurrection this week. Our political analyst, Matt Robeson, and I will talk about that. COVID cases are running high locally. We talked about some of the numbers yesterday. The question, does that translate to higher hospitalizations in this area as well? We'll chat with Dr. Clark Milton from WVU Medicine Wheeling Hospital on that subject this morning. Wheeling Council will today at their meeting officially begin the process of considering changing the zoning code for residential neighborhoods. We talked about it a bit yesterday. It's going to officially begin wending its way through city bureaucracy today, so you'll see more about it in coverage of today's meetings, and we're going to have a lot more about it here on this radio show. And the Steelers won last night. They managed to stay in the playoffs as Big Ben says, I'm done. Last home game for him last night. All of that's coming up from me to ye. What do you have for me? 304-214-1600. 304-214-1600. It is the Watchdog Radio Network text line. You can also use the CityNet hotline at 304-232-8255. 304-232-TALK. Always happy to get you on the line if you have something on your mind. Pete, does it seem like we hear more and more stories about people who get violent when they don't get just what they want at fast food places?
Yes, it does.
I mean, it just seems like, I suppose we just highlight them, and maybe there's no more now than there ever was, but it seems like we're talking about these a lot. Now, do you like hush puppies?
Yeah.
I mean the shoes, but I mean,
Yeah, I like the food.
Yeah, I love the hush puppies. And I think Long John Silver's is a fast food place. They do a pretty good job with their hush puppies. I've had some recently. It's really good. I like them, no question about it. Well, apparently, so did one woman. She liked the hush puppies, but she only wanted one. She only wanted one. So she was driving through a Long John Silver's in Indiana over the weekend, and she said, I'd like a hush puppy. And the nice 20-year-old gentleman behind the window said, excuse me, we only sell them in groups of 2. That'll be 2 for $1.95. And that's when she went berserk. She began screaming, that's outrageous, it's outrageous, I only want one. And the guy said, we only sell them in groups of 2, and that's for $1.95. She demanded, sell me only one, you. And then she called him a racial slur. Then another woman in the same car began calling the restaurant, asking to speak to the owner. I want to talk to the owner. I want to talk to the owner. They would hang up on her. They'd call right back. I want to talk to the manager. I want to talk to the manager. When that didn't work out, now mind you, this is not that they couldn't get a hush puppy. It's that they had to take 2 when they only wanted 1. And I don't know about you, Biff. I've always taken the approach, if you insist I take more food, I'll take more. If I'd wanted 2 and they said, no, you can only have 1, I might get mad. But I want 1, well, I have to take 2. I got to take 2? Okay, I'll take 2. So she only wanted 1. She had to get 2. She got upset, calling the manager. She walked inside the restaurant and trashed the place. She attacked the drive-through worker, kicked her in the stomach, which was a big deal because the drive-through worker was pregnant. Luckily, it sounds like she is okay. Cops are still trying to track her down. She ran away, so they don't have her yet. All because she wanted 1 hush puppy, and they said, we only sell them in groups of 2 for $1.95. Less than $2 for 2 hush puppies. Wouldn't you think, Biff, you wanted 1, they tell you, well, I can only give you 2 for less than $2. Wouldn't you just pay the $2 and take the 2 hush puppies?
Yeah, because no food is worth going over that much trouble for.
You know, if this woman, I mean, she kicked a pregnant woman in the stomach. Apparently the pregnant woman is okay. The story here from the Associated Press tells me she's okay, but that could have serious repercussions if damage was done to the baby, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you wouldn't take 2 hush puppies?
Yeah, I mean, take 2, and if you got someone else in the car with you, I mean, give it to them, or I mean...
It's what I'm thinking. We know she had someone else in the car. It says that the other person in the car was calling the store and, trying to talk to the manager. Wouldn't you just take 2 and say, here, Myrtle, have the other one? I only want 1. Myrtle, why don't you have this one?
Or take the
I had
other,
to buy 2.
Or take the other one home and eat it later on.
But it seems to me we're seeing more and more of this. People don't get the exact thing they want at the exact time they want, in the exact way they want it, and they go crazy. And they go berserk.
There's no need to make a gigantic scene over it. I mean, it's not like they did it on purpose or anything. I mean, they're only trying to do their job. Let them go. I mean, if they make a mistake, they make a mistake. Okay, yeah, you don't need to make a spectacle out of it.
It wasn't even a mistake. They don't sell single hush puppies. They sell them in groups of 2.
Yeah, I mean, or whatever it is. I mean, there's still no need to go crazy over it.
However, this whole conversation has got me thinking now about some hush puppies. Last hour I was thinking about spaghetti and lasagna because this is National Spaghetti Day. Now I'm thinking about hush puppies, which they could go with lasagna probably, don't you think, Biff?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Yeah, all right. Not a traditional lasagna side dish, I guess. Anyway, it just seems like there's more and more of this stuff. 8:16 on the Watchdog Morning Show. 20 degrees hereabouts in the Upper Ohio Valley. Feels like temperature 12, so bundle up this morning. Our national correspondent, Tom Squitieri, is here with us. Good morning, Tom.
Hi. Good morning, Howard.
I heard a deep sigh there. I heard a deep sigh.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for me to focus on national affairs after hearing about lasagna and all that good breakfast food. I mean, I'm thinking these guys really don't know how to do this to me.
Yeah, well, this is National Spaghetti Day, so we've been talking about.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And now I know it all happened. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I'm ashamed of my heritage for not knowing that.
That's exactly right. What's your favorite Italian food?
Well, if it's being homemade, I love lasagna. Lasagna that's made by my grandmother or my mother or one of my relatives is the best Italian food there is. And then raised Catholic, where we couldn't have meat on Friday, we'd have linguine with clam sauce, which was always pretty good. Yeah. So those are atop my list. But again, it's got to be homemade.
My wife makes a mean lasagna. I've been trying to. Honey, don't forget I like some lasagna. I'm just saying.
Big hint. Big hint.
Big hint. She makes a mean lasagna. She's really good at lasagna. So.
Good.
Yeah. But I
that's
like
a real test. If you go into an Italian restaurant, Howard, there are certain things you can order. I think that it's a test of the kitchen, and lasagna is one of them.
Okay. You know what? According to a survey, we got to get to political stuff real quick, but according to a survey that I had here this morning in conjunction with National Spaghetti Day, spaghetti is actually the 3rd most popular Italian food in this country. Lasagna is number 2. Do you know what the survey said the number 1 most popular Italian food was?
Well, are they counting pizza as an Italian food?
No. Well, they are.
Okay.
It came in at like 19 or something.
Oh, okay. Then I'm clueless.
Well, this is not what I would consider an Italian food. I eat it with spaghetti, but I wouldn't call it an Italian food. Garlic bread.
Yeah, that's an accoutrement. It's not food.
Exactly. I mean, is it good to have Italian bread with a bowl full of spaghetti or some lasagna? Yeah, absolutely it is. And again, when we make lasagna here, and when I say we, I mean my wife, makes lasagna here at home, always garlic bread with it. I mean, it's great. But I wouldn't consider that to be an Italian food, so.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my food conversation for the day. That and the hush puppy attack. So there we go.
The hush puppy attack.
Tom, let's talk about a couple of domestic stories here real quick, and we've got some international things to get to as well. Looks like Chuck Schumer is going to try again to, if not get rid of the filibuster, he says he wants to look at revising the rules of the Senate. With an eye to the filibuster, I guess, but he phrases it in a more broad way in his Dear Colleague letter he sent out yesterday. strikes me as still a hopeless cause because of Manchin and Sinema and some others. But what do you think?
I agree with you on that. I saw that, and I did a few calls, just more so just to chat with friends in the new year, and we talked about it, and I got their insights. And what we seem to be feeling is that he's trying to do something without calling it what he's trying to do. In other words, try to find a pathway to get perhaps some limited rules changed without getting rid of the filibuster. And I don't know how you would do that, nor did any of my friends in these conversations. Your point is the point that I thought of immediately, Howard, is where do you get the 51 votes to do this? And if they could figure out a way to only have 51 votes and not 60 votes. I think he has to go for the 51 votes, of course, with Harris in the chair. So I don't know how he gets there with Manchin and Sinema and maybe some others as well. He hasn't, as we talked about last week, he hasn't been able to gain one Republican senator to help him in any of these. So I don't know. I think wishful thinking is what you said, and that's probably, New Year's resolution of wishful thinking.
Manchin is, we've talked about this before, you and I. We talk about it almost every day here on this show. Manchin there's some things he's not going to bend on. Now, there are some Senate Dems who think they're going to be able to bring him in on Build Back Better, and maybe a revised version of that. That's possible, I guess, if they revise it enough. But, he's been very adamant about not eliminating the filibuster.
Yeah.
And he doesn't seem to want to even do it as sort of a one-time only thing or a only for certain things. He just seems adamant to not believing that you should get rid of it. So I just don't know how Schumer's going to get past that.
I don't know. I had when Schumer was early on in the Senate, he was pretty. When he first came to the Senate and those years, he was pretty deft at Senate rules and knowing how to get things done. And so I thought, when he became majority leader, we'd see a lot of creative legislating within the rules, and he's just been stymied, by the makeup of the Senate and issues that have not existed for 20 years. I had this yesterday, part of the conversation with one of my friends. He's a big fan of LBJ, when LBJ was president as well as Senate Majority Leader, and we were just sort of remarking the difference in the Senate then when Johnson was the Majority Leader and then became president, how he would essentially work people to get them to find a compromise that they all could live with, but it was still achieving Johnson's goal. It's just incredible difference in the Senate. No, I realize that's more than 50 years ago, but still the makeup of the body and the makeup of the leadership and the people who listen to the leadership, to work with the leadership, is just completely different.
Well, leaders, the party loyalty, if that's the right word, was a lot stronger. The belief in following what the leadership had to say back then was just different than it is right now. And the leader was different. LBJ was a unique character. He knew how to manipulate things. Excuse me, still have that cough that I had last week. And frankly, Manchin is a good manipulator on the other side. That's what Manchin was good at when he was in the governor's office.
Yeah.
He was the guy who could make things happen. So he knows how to push back against it because he was the guy that was doing the pushing before. So it's a big story, I guess, today, but I'm just not sure it's going to happen. Schumer wants to I think he's trying to get election rules passed, and he knows that Manchin's in support of changing some of these election rules, but he's got to do it without the filibuster, and Manchin's not going to do it by getting rid of the filibuster. I don't know. It's
well, we'll see. We'll see if he comes up with a way. It'll be very interesting to watch.
It will be. We did a interview last week with a local historian who was talking about the days of the Cold War and the Red Scare and all that kind of stuff. I'm old enough to remember when MAD was the word, mutual assured destruction. The U.S. and Russia have been talking about this a bit as well recently. I hate to think that we're going back to that kind of thing, but, talking about what happens if there's some kind of a nuclear exchange, right?
They are, and it was very interesting. Yesterday, what's called the P5 group, Howard, that's the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, issued a joint statement saying that there's no winners in nuclear war, and thank you, Captain Obvious, and
Obvious, yeah.
that they strongly urge not the spread of the weapons be prevented. Now, of course, all 5 of these countries, the United States, China, Russia, France, and Great Britain, have nuclear weapons, as do several other countries already. But they think, a nuclear war, we affirm that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Far-reaching consequences. So, everyone gets the fact that that's bad, but Cold War mentality is creeping back in because of Ukraine in some part, as well as the whole China in the South Pacific. Every day now I'm seeing the last week, South Korea wants nuclear-powered submarines. The U.S. and Japan are going to conduct military exercises. Taiwan wants China, et cetera, et cetera. So we're seeing the same kind of tensions, as you pointed out, that we saw in the 50s between then the Soviet Union and the United States. Now it's Russia and China and the United States and NATO in the case of Russia. So, I do think that it's a throwback in that sense to what we saw, but now there are more nuclear weapons. And now you have these proxy issues going on that exacerbate it. So I do see that Cold War mentality. It'll be interesting, really, to see, what happens in Ukraine with the meetings this month with Russia and different entities. That's sort of primary, where the China one is more slow-moving.
President Biden made a direct call to the president of Ukraine to talk about this week, right?
Yeah, he did. He did, and he reaffirmed the strong support of the United States and NATO for Ukraine. As Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, said in a statement, Biden made it clear the United States and allies and partners will respond decisively. That word decisively is a good word to focus on, Howard, because if there's one thing the Biden administration has been consistent about is using the strong, clear words, decisive, strong, united. Here's the irony, one of the ironies of all this, from the Pentagon's perspective, is that Putin's threatened action to Ukraine has made NATO a more cohesive group, and it actually has pushed NATO members who are reluctant to support Ukraine into a position of willingly supporting Ukraine with supplies and materiel, not troops, but, with bolstering the Ukraine's military and moving NATO troops into rotational formations in Eastern Europe, which is just what Russia didn't want to see. So right. in a sense, Putin dug his own grave in this type of thing. It's made NATO much more united. We talk military, but the other thing is the economic sanctions that have been threatened to Russia. They've been warned by the United States and Europe. This is going to happen, and this is a powerful tool. Again, going back to what you said about the Cold War, remember, economics were a big factor then. Khrushchev's great line about "we will bury you," which was misinterpreted as meaning by nuclear weapons, he meant by a system and an economic resurgence, which never happened in the Soviet Union. And Reagan forced them to buy weapons that killed their economy. It was the economy, stupid, that got the Soviet Union to collapse. And, that's what would be again now if they cut off the Nord Stream pipeline, or, stop Russia from participating in international wire transfers. There's a bunch of things like that. So the Cold War lives. You're absolutely correct.
I want to talk about one more thing before I let you go, because it's just something that we had sort of wondered about as the withdrawal from Afghanistan occurred. The Taliban began to take control of the country again. But at least in those initial days, the Taliban had said, we're going to be a, kinder, gentler Taliban. That was sort of the impression they wanted us to have. But they are continuing to be pretty hard line, are they not, over there in Afghanistan?
They are. I'm going to use a cliche because it works the best. Actions speak louder than words. And, yesterday in Herat, which is a big city on the border of Iran, they ordered all mannequins and clothing stores the heads be taken off of them because they're idols, false idols. Now, the only thing that the Taliban will tell you is, well, we don't control all our people. People make regional decisions. If you want to believe that, go ahead. But the overall scope of what the Taliban is doing is returning their ways. Over the weekend, they ordered that women couldn't travel alone beyond a certain period of miles, like 35 miles or something, without a male escort. So you're absolutely correct. Hey, I know we're running out of time, but there's one thing I wanted to mention domestically. Tomorrow, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, was supposed to do a report sort of the 1 year later in the January 6th insurrection, which the anniversary is Thursday. There's not a lot of optimism that he's going to say anything worthwhile. This is the negative feeling about what he's not done, where the January 6th Commission is moving more aggressively. We had a 6 to 8 inch snowfall here in Washington, Howard, yesterday. And all I was thinking about, this is how obsessed I am with stories and news, is just imagine if this would have happened a year ago and how different it would have been. It would have really slowed down that insurrection.
Yeah, we talked, I think you and I last week. Do you feel, and we're going to talk more about this insurrection anniversary in the next hour of the show. You don't really feel that we're in danger of another attempt this week on the anniversary, do you?
I do not. No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. One is Congress is essentially out of session, although they're going to have a ceremony to mark the day. But there's no event like the counting of the ballots, to trigger that. Second, law enforcement has been pretty aggressive in cracking down on these groups and monitoring them. There's been no indication, that doesn't mean there is any, of any such gathering to occur.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that there isn't something that could happen down the road. Maybe not on the
No, that's two different
date,
things.
But
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah.
No.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Your point was well taken. We have talked about it before. There is still an open-ended question. Will there be more violence against democracy? It's simply that January 6th of this year does not seem to lend itself to that, even though it's an anniversary date.
I'm going to give you an example, an analogy from my home here. I have an old gas range. It has those metal things you set around the burners. And I tried to clean them and put fireproof black paint on them to make them look nice. And it worked for a while, but eventually the heat caused that paint just to chip off. Okay, not to the fire danger, but it caused a chip. That's how I see what we have in regards to the insurrection people out there. In the military space, is more problem than they want to admit. It's out there, and it's just going to chip away at us for a long time. And, the question is whether we get a handle on it enough to not necessarily prevent it, but to minimize it.
Yeah, good point. All right, Tom, appreciate it. We'll talk again next week and see
all
how
right,
things
and
go.
Happy New Year.
Same to you. Hope you had a good holiday.
And when your wife makes lasagna, give me a call, please.
Okay. you can come back and visit the region, and we'll bring you down. Okay. All right, Tom. Good talking to you. Thanks a lot. Tom Scudieri is our national correspondent. Joins us every Tuesday at this time to kind of recap some of the international stories that we don't usually talk about, because that's what Tom covers from the Pentagon, and of course the big political stories of the week, whatever they might be. In the next hour, we will talk more about the insurrection, the Capitol attack a year ago, January 6th. We'll talk a bit about how it happened last year and what we may have learned about that attack. We'll also talk about what may be the going forwardness of those kinds of attacks. Our political consultant, former congressional staffer, former campaign consultant, Matt Robeson, and I will kick that around next hour. But in the next half hour, we're going to get some COVID conversation going with Dr. Clark Milton from WVU Medicine, Wheeling Hospital. Right now, we're going to get some headlines from the Big Seven.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now it's time for your local news headline.
Be back in a minute, Biffy. All right, I'm back, Biffy. Very good, thank you. Am I going to need a second break? Okay, thank you. Good deal.
Don't go it alone. If you're hurt in an accident, call us at 304-242-2900 or visit us at gelnerlaw.com.
We'd like to help.
This is MSN, the Mountaineer Sports Network.
A 3, call the Star City Fire Department.
Catch all the action.
Another steal, takes it to the bucket. Slam, dunk.
All season long.
He rainbowed in a three-pointer. Takes the ball toward the basket, pulls up for a jumper in the wind. It is no good. West Virginia wins it.
On your home for Mountaineer basketball.
We're on air, online, on video, and on demand. Find us where you like us. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
Starting off with mostly cloudy skies today, and we do have some clouds still floating around out there, but it's beginning to clear up a little bit. It should be mostly clear later on during the day. Daytime high of 41, but we are starting out cold. 21 at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 19 degrees here at my home studios in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling, and 20 degrees at the Robinson Auto Group Studios, downtown Wheeling, in the heart of the Ohio Valley. The around 20-degree temperatures on the thermometer feel like around 12 degrees, so it's a cold morning. You need to bundle up and check your windshields if you haven't gone out yet. You may have to do a little bit of scraping, all that kind of stuff. It is definitely a cold day. We have been talking the last couple of days about the rise in COVID cases in Ohio County. Yesterday we heard from Howard Gamble. The official count for the week between Christmas and New Year's was 502. That compared to 12, something like that, the week before. So it's clearly on the rise as far as positive cases. The question that several people ask me is that translating into more hospitalizations? It's a question I will ask Dr. Clark Milton from WVU Medicine Wheeling Hospital. Dr. Milton, good morning and welcome to the show as always.
Good morning, Howard. I wish I could tell you it's a happy new year, but it's not so happy with those numbers that you just mentioned.
And are they translating into hospitalizations as well?
We're seeing a decoupling. I hope we're seeing a decoupling between case numbers, hospitalizations, and deaths. Unfortunately, when you have numbers going up like we do, those proportions then seem to add to our hospitalizations, and we're hanging right where we've been through Delta, and we had hoped we'd be down, which is putting a stress on, obviously, patients, but in addition, healthcare personnel. So unfortunately, it appears that overall there's decreased hospitalization from a percentage standpoint of the positive numbers, if you understand what I'm saying. But we are in the midst, as you and Tom were talking about, a Cold War. Only this cold is a little different, and nuclear weapons won't stop it.
So the current increase in cases, the cases may be a little bit milder, so not as many folks are getting sent to the hospital. Now, the proportions may be there, but not as many are getting sent.
I'm hopeful. Remember, we're trying to do this in real time, and we basically have incomplete data. And it's intrinsically incomplete. So we're trying to figure that as we go along. And we're trying to also decide, is this the new variant that's changed biologically, which Omicron has, what we've seen in South Africa, the UK. We're not sequencing enough of those to define that. I believe Howard Monroe will tell you that although we haven't defined it in our areas, Omicron, we got to assume it's here. and I really have to assume it's here by the transmissibility of this current set of symptoms that's occurring. It is just tearing through communities right now. Our hospital workers are positive. Our communities are positive. The numbers are up. So it smells like Omicron.
Yeah, it's what Howard Gamble told us yesterday, that they can't objectively say yes or no, but he feels confident that Omicron probably is around. But Dr. Milton, Omicron is not as, I don't want to use what word I want to use, but it doesn't create as much a problem for people as the Delta variant did. It is a milder form.
Well, again, this is all in real time, and we don't have the opportunity to peer review. But some Scottish data earlier this week looks that it seems that there's been in these mutations a biological change that allows increased transmissibility. It's easier to pass on because it maintains a very strong replication in the upper airways, but it's not very good at getting into the lungs. And that's important because that's where the wild virus, the first one, and then alpha and beta, they went right for the lungs, and then that's what causes big problems and, unfortunately, the death rate to be so high. So it does appear, and it would make evolutionary sense when you think about the virus in this great chess match with humanity, trying to survive as more and more humans get some sort of immunity, either from previous disease and or vaccination. So this sort of sequence makes sense as we battle this virus to hopefully it becomes more endemic like the other corona cold viruses and not such a problematic from deaths and hospitalizations.
You alluded to the staff and the people who work at the hospital as well as to the patients. I certainly hear in some of the news stories across the country that the staff is just getting burned out. Are you seeing that to be the case?
Well, we've heard it called many things over the past 22 months. Is it grief? Is it burnout? Is it post-traumatic stress? I refer to it as pandemic fatigue. And one thing that I've just been totally impressed with is the resilience of the majority of our healthcare professionals. They show up and do their job in spite of this, the pressure that they've noted, the fear, the confusion, the positive test, the near misses. Am I going to get this? But it's put a challenge. It's a challenge on staffing. It's a challenge on staffing here. It's a challenge on staffing in hospitals throughout the state. It's a challenge in staffing throughout the country. But the resiliency is unbelievable that I've seen in the majority. Of course, we always have whiners, but they're few. And they keep showing up at work, and the staffing, and when those that are positive and are out for 7 to 10 days, mostly 10 days, you got to pick up the slack. It's been a very tedious, trying time for hospital staff. Now, that's not to mention if you're sick, you got another set of challenges.
Yeah, well, again, I want to be clear. Those are two different issues, and if you're sick, you don't want to be there, and you have real problems, burnout or whatever you want to call it. As you look at this pandemic and where we are now and where we have been for now 2 years, where are we in the life of this, or maybe we don't know? Where do you think we are going? I was in a conversation last night, just sitting around, bull session kind of thing. A lot of folks say that we're going to just have to learn somehow to live with COVID for the long haul. Do you think that's the case?
Yes, I do. I think that this virus is become part of our structure of life. It will be like other coronaviruses that we have. There are 4 others that cause colds and this nasal congestion that we move on with and we live with it. We're sick for a couple days. And then we move on. And I anticipate that's what this will be once the population has some form of immunity. I'm not using the term herd immunity, but some degree. And that's what we're seeing now, and that's probably why we're not seeing the deaths. Okay, deaths lag behind the numbers, so we'll have to see in the next couple weeks. But there's been an adaptation. A majority of people have either been vaccinated or been exposed, so they have some immunity. Yes, this Omicron seems to be able to evade our antibodies, but other forms of our immune system, the T cells, which you hear about, and are protective, boosting with the vaccine, getting another high level seems to do it. So we have these tools now that are going to move this out of this pandemic and into what we refer to as an endemic, where we have a geographical location that has the presence of this virus, but we move on forward. That would be the hope.
People who've listened to my show for the last few weeks have known I've had a little chest congestion and cough.
I heard
tested
that.
for COVID. It's not COVID. But it's something I get every year, and I understand it. It happens every year. I have to treat it every year, and eventually it goes away. I mean, that's the kind of way we may have to simply approach COVID, except that, and I'm saying this as a statement, I really mean it as a question, just accepting that it's going to be around, and we will, some people will contract it, and we'll deal with it, and we'll have to move on. In the same way I learn every year to deal with this chest congestion and cough.
I can't make a better description and or analogy. That is so true. And I don't know whether this will be influenza-like, where we have 12 to 50,000 deaths a year from it. I suspect it's going to be like that. And those deaths will come in those that have comorbidities and multiple problems and either heart, lung issues, diabetes, and that's why it's so important not to get those things if you can prevent those. But I think you're right. I think that's how we're going to. The timing. When? Everybody wants to know when. When will we put this behind us? And I don't have a crystal ball. I really thought I'd be talking to you in the 1st of January and saying, Delta's over, we're moving forward. And that didn't happen. So it is very frustrating to everybody involved.
Vaccination still the first line of defense?
Vaccinations are key. And even the South African data shows that if you've been boosted and it really pushes you up in that 70-80% protective with these mRNA vaccines. If you're eligible to be vaccinated, and if you haven't been vaccinated, please consider it. And it's just not for you as an individual. It's for your family. It's for your neighbors. It's for your community. It's for your coworkers. It's for all of us. And if you have been vaccinated, and yesterday they changed it, you're eligible for a booster 5 months in adults, in adolescents too. 5 months after your last vaccine. Get it. It pops those immunoglobulins up. They become more effective in spite of what I said about Omicron being invasive to it, and that is so important. Will it prevent the disease? No, it might not.
No.
But it prevents the seriousness of it, the hospitalizations, the deaths. I looked at this morning, and 70% of the people in the hospital here with a diagnosis of active COVID are not vaccinated.
That was my question. That still is the case. The people coming into the ER, the people coming in for treatment for COVID who have been diagnosed are, to a large extent, the unvaccinated.
It's about 70%, 68 something. I mean, that's just a little microcosm of the big picture, but that's been consistently there.
I have, unfortunately, a extended family member who came down with COVID. The rest of the family tested negative. One tested positive, but she was the one member of the family that had been unvaccinated, and the rest of the family had been fully vaccinated and tested positive or tested negative. And she was the only one who tested negative. It does make a difference, I guess.
It's more than a guess. It does make a difference. And we have all these debates. Well, I'm going to get it anyway, and that may be the case. But you just don't know if you're the one that's going to have a serious complication, and that is the problem. And we've had a number of young people die unnecessarily, in my opinion. I do want to maybe bring up the testing issue just a little bit, because we're struggling a little bit with testing kits and those in the community. We know we have, and you had mentioned on the news segment that at OVMC, the old OVMC, that's where the testing site is for the community. Try not to show up at the emergency department at Wheeling Hospital and get tested. The emergency department has been overwhelmed. The testing facility is down at the old OVMC. Now, you're ill, you can't breathe, you're short of breath, you have chest pain, different story. Then that's the group that needs to come to the emergency department. And that's sort of my public announcement for today. Because the testing, we were testing a whole lot more people. A lot of people have symptoms, and majority of them don't need the hospital situation, but may need tested. And do it at OVMC.
The lines are, I understand, pretty long there at the OVMC, and I know waiting to get an appointment in the case I went to was MedExpress, everything it's longer. Are people just getting more nervous, do you think, or are they feeling, why are so many people going to get tested, I guess, in your opinion? What are you sensing?
Well, I think the number of symptoms in people is accelerated. That probably came from the 2 holidays that we just experienced. And you're symptomatic these days, and if you're trying to go to school or you're trying to go to work, everybody, you can't come, you got to be and have a negative test. And I think that's driving it. And I think that's important. There are a lot of home tests being done. If you can find them, they're hard to find right now, too. They're useful for those that are not particularly ill and have this stuffy head, runny nose, headache, maybe a little fever, which seems to be the more common symptoms right now. And people want to know, how do I differentiate cold from influenza from COVID-19 right now? Well, the only way really to do it is test, because they're all very similar presentations.
The vaccination is I guess really the key, but the testing is important, and I take it as a positive sign that more people are getting tested in this sense. It says to me that people are taking these symptoms more seriously now, that they're beginning to recognize the symptoms and see it as a potential problem and are going to get tested. I may be looking at it the wrong way, but to me, I see that somewhat as an optimistic sign that people are paying more attention now.
Well, we are entering the 3rd year. We would hope that people are paying attention, and I'm not trying to be a smarty pants. And I think they are, even with this fatigue, and I hear so many people say, I just don't care anymore. But I think they do. And I think the rationale is, I don't want to give it to grandma. I don't want to give it to Aunt Jane, who is a diabetic. I want to protect my close family, and that's a good thing.
Dr. Milton, always appreciate your time this morning, your insights. You always give us good stuff. I thank you for it. We'll probably talk again as time goes by, but thank you for being here today.
My pleasure, Howard. Have a good day.
All right, you too. Dr. Clark Milton from WVU Medicine Wheeling Hospital on hospitalizations, kind of waiting to see if this really big surge last week, for example, in COVID positive cases turns into more hospitalizations. Doesn't seem to be heading quite that way, 1 for 1, but the hospitals are still getting bogged down. 9 o'clock, Watchdog Morning Show, going to shift to another kind of war, not the war on COVID, but the war for democracy. Matt Robus and I coming up next hour right here.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Administration's response to surge.
Okay, where'd it go?